Understandable. Good morning. I am Zan Osro, Chair of the Benton County Board of Commissioners, and I'd like to welcome you all and to acknowledge the fact that we are on the ancestral lands of the Calapooian people who are still with us, present in the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and Siletz, after being forcibly removed to make way for settlement. I would move next to introductions, beginning with my fellow commissioners.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
Good morning, Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
Alyssa Rash, Public Information Officer.
Johan, Equity, Diversity,
Sheriff's Office.
Johan, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Coordinator, he, they pronouns.
Erica Milo, Board Recorder.
Risa Farley, Board of Commissioners. Staff.
I think that about covers it for staff. Would our guests like to introduce themselves?
Good morning. This is Caroline Cummings with RAIN.
Good morning, Corey Wright, reporting.
Hi, good morning. Holly Papira with Marys River Watershed Council.
Thank you and welcome. Okay, let's take a look at the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? We will be having an executive session under other. Okay. I hear no changes. So without further ado, we can move forward and consider the agenda accepted. We'll begin our work session this morning with our annual report from the Marys River Watershed Council. This report is a stipulation of the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board for Watershed Council continuing operations, and Holly's with us to give us an update.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. As I was prepping for our meeting today, I was reflecting on the last time that I presented to you all. It was in January of 2020, and just reflecting on the past year and all of the both chaos and also the great changes within the council that I'm excited to talk about today. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I'll be able to do so without any difficulty. All right, can everybody see the presentation screen?
Indeed, thank you.
Wonderful. All right, so as I mentioned previously, I work with Marys River Watershed Council. We're a nonprofit watershed group based in Oregon for any new faces, and that we work to inspire and support the voluntary stewardship of the Marys River watershed, which the Marys River watershed flows predominantly through Benton County and then as well through some of the adjacent counties too, like Lincoln and the other counties surrounding us. Over the past year, we've added on 2 new additional staff positions, an education coordinator and an assistant project manager. And as well, we have a new AmeriCorps Vista starting in April. The Benton County, a few of you on the commission have previously worked with Nikki Hobbs, who was our prior AmeriCorps Vista. And within the AmeriCorps program, they serve a 12-month term. And as well, I'll briefly touch on our board of directors, and we've expanded to add a few more seats on our board too over the past year. And as I briefly mentioned, we're a nonprofit corporation, and we work to serve predominantly the residents of Benton County, and that's through our education programming as well as our outreach and environmental restoration. And here's a map of our watershed as well as the adjacent watersheds to provide an overview. The Marys River has no major dams, and it does provide drinking water for the city of Bologna and about 30% or so of the drinking water for the city of Fort Dallas. And to briefly provide an overview of our finances for the past year, we have been very fortunate in the past year that even within the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been able to stay pretty financially sound and have even been able to sustain our programs. Something for which we feel very fortunate of. I know the economic difficulties felt over the past year have hit so many. All right, so I'm going to give a broad overview of a few of our programs and as well touch on a few of the items that we've been up to. And first off, I want to review our education program. So pre-COVID, we had a few in-person events. As I was compiling these photos, I don't know if you all have experienced this, but like seeing photos or things from before COVID of people gathering, seeing especially the Lincoln Steam Night photo. It was very anxiety provoking, and it's amazing what all can change in about a year. But before COVID-19 set in, we were continuing to do our classroom lessons and as well outreach and other programs for youth as well as for adults in Benton County. And over the past year after COVID-19 set in, we are continuing our education program in the schools. We've shifted our learning over to remote-based learning, so videos as well as education kits for our third grade program at Lincoln and Garfield Elementary that's funded thanks to the support of the Great Family Foundation and Trust Management, the Oregon Trailblazers, and many others. And as we work within this program with the Institute for Applied Ecology and other partners across Benton County. And then as well over the past year, we've expanded our outreach into virtual methods too, so virtual trivia nights and a virtual 5K walk and bike ride. And we have, within our outreach programming as well as our partnering with stakeholders across our watershed and across the Willamette, we've also had a very busy year this past year. We rejoined the Confluence Group, the shared space partners that are working, you all may be familiar, working with Alan Ayers to construct a building next to Rob Metz Hardware downtown. And as part of the Confluence Group, we've been going through a diversity, equity, and inclusion process, which has included trainings for our board and staff, as well as more in-depth change agent trainings, coaching sessions. We're currently working to develop an equity lens and continuing to work to evaluate both our internal practices, our external programming, and ways that we could be more welcoming. And this was funded thanks to the support of Meyer Memorial Trust. As well, another group that we've been involved with over the past year is Mid-Valley River Connections, and it's a partnership amongst the 5 watershed councils located in the Mid-Willamette. And these 5 watershed councils were also part of the Meyer Memorial Trust Model Watershed Program. And after the sunset of the Model Watershed Program, something that we value so much was that close collaboration that came as part of that. And one thing that we're working amongst the Mid-Valley River Connections groups to do, in addition to exploring as well separate diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings and other peer learning networks, we are forming a Mid-Willamette Beaver partnership, which actually here just this week we're working to add all 5 watershed councils in Mid-Valley River Connections. And as part of this, funded through the support of the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, We'll be doing a robust stakeholder engagement, evaluating the limiting factors to beaver-centric restoration and beavers on the landscape within the many shared stakeholders in the Mid-Willamette. And then through a paired technical assistance grant, we'll be working to evaluate areas of opportunity for beaver restoration. And it's an initiative that we're very excited about. As well, I briefly touched on it in my presentation last year, and an update within our Oak Creek stakeholder engagement process. Over the past year, we convened 32 groups over the course of both in-person meetings and then what turned into Zoom meetings, and then work groups as well to evaluate areas of opportunity across the Oak Creek subwatershed of the Marys River, which is one of our urban streams. It flows from the Mac Forest and then through much of the Oregon State University campus and into the Marys right near Avery Park. And we're working with groups to hone in on areas that we are focusing on, both in terms of riparian restoration and then as well as upland restoration. And one program that has come to fruition from that effort has been our Trout-Friendly Landscapes program. And within this, we are hoping to form a technical advisory team to evaluate areas of opportunity for green stormwater infrastructure in Benton County. And so this would be not just in the Oak Creek watershed. This idea came to fruition as part of that initiative, but our vision is to expand it to a broader base within the Benton County urban streams and their headwaters. So our hope is to convene this technical advisory team to work together to help evaluate the best next steps into having a program that would potentially be a cost share program similar to one of the program in Eugene. And within that, it would be looking to establish and on a voluntary basis with landowners and others, ways of stormwater retention outside of the general regulations and requirements that are as part of the MS4 permit. So looking to retrofit impervious surfaces like parking lots to have a bioswale or something to have some of the stormwater flowing off those surfaces containing oils, chemicals, other pollutants to flow through a way to retain that as well as to filter out those pollutants. And reviewing the restoration that the council has done over the past year, the first restoration I have is actually something that we've done in an urban setting that is a perfect example of the sorts of things that we would be investigating as part of the Trout-Friendly Landscapes program. The Denali Creek filtering wetland that we put in with the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition in the city of Corvallis is a perfect example of areas of opportunity that we can help retain stormwater to prevent pollutants from flowing into the stream. So at the Starker Arts Park duck pond, whenever there'd be a large stormwater event, prior to our work in here, the water would flow through a channel straight into the creek. And what we work to do is put in a filtering wetland to filter out the sediment and nutrients from the ducks and bullfrogs and to prevent the nutrient loading that we were seeing in Denali Creek by keeping that water in the system longer and rehabilitating what was previously a wetland that was defunct. And so we had a volunteer help us with gathering photos over the past year of the wetland work. We put the wetlands in November of 2019. And so we've been able to have photos of the wetland capturing water to help grow this field. We added native plants and a berm to prevent it from flooding the bike path, which is on the other side of the where the photo is being taken. It's the bike path. And you can see the water gathering in the wetland and being retained before being absorbed into the soil and not running just straight through a channel into the Maui Creek. And all of the species that we planted are native species, and we've had a team of socially distanced volunteers who have helped us with water in the wetlands as well as with removing invasive species that are encroaching from the outer side. And other restoration, as part of the Oak Creek stakeholder engagement process, other restoration that's planned for Oak Creek, we are hoping to work with the OSU Dairy Farm to review alternatives to two barriers to fish passage, the Dairy Farm Dam, as well as the OSU Research Weir in the Mac Forest. And then as well, there are renovations that we're working with the city of Corvallis to hopefully move forward in Windham Hill natural area too. Another restoration project that we've done over the past year, we completed construction on the Beaver Creek Ash Swale, which is located near Tiny Winery, for anybody familiar with the area, so south of Corvallis. And this was reconnecting an ash swale to help filter pollutants through, as well as help the stream engage its natural floodplain. And over the past year, we've also worked with Benton County Public Works to do a few plantings in both Skunk Alder Creek as well as Bull Run. And we're continuing to treat knotweed, which is an invasive species that has taken hold in a few areas of the Marys River. And over the past year, we've been able to expand our treatment program, or funding for our treatment program, to expand from 4 sub-watersheds of the Marys, which we previously worked with, to the whole of the Marys watershed. And we're also working on the permitting process for our Upper Marys system recovery, where we'll be putting in beaver dam analogs as well as large woody debris to help restore this channel to more natural ice process. And thanks to the Bureau of Land Management, we recently have been funded to carry out restoration in Blease Creek, which is in the Muddy Creek subwatershed of the Marys. And as well, we're working with BLM to do eDNA sampling for both Pacific lamprey as well as freshwater mussels. And as well, we're also working in the Upper Muddy, working with the Benton Soil and Water Conservation District here to start a 4-year monitoring program in the Upper Muddy as part of the Upper Muddy Strategic Implementation Area through the Oregon Department of Agriculture and the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. And other projects coming on the horizon, we're looking to provide an infusion of large wood to retain gains in our restoration in Woods Creek. And within that, we're hoping to put in the new wood structures as well as to help stabilize a few existing structures that I currently over the past year that have been shifting a little bit during a time of high water flows. And yeah, so thank you again for letting me report to you all today. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for me.
Well, I would just comment that you all are doing an awful lot, given the last challenging year. And I'm personally very happy to see the diversification of partnerships and funding sources that you're able to bring in to continue to focus on the Marys River and its major tributary Muddy Creek. It's exciting. Are there questions for Holly? Oh, I guess I do have one question as well. You mentioned the Urban Waters Program, and I know that you've had a couple of meetings on that topic here in town that included staff from the county as well as from the city of Corvallis. And so, and you're asking for county support as well, aren't you, to help move that task force forward to help potentially define a program?
We are, yeah. We're hoping that the county may be able to help us provide seed funding to convene that technical advisory group in this inaugural year. So we've been grateful for the county support to allow their staff to participate within our Oak Creek stakeholder engagement process, as well as in the Long-Term Watershed Council workshops that they provided to review their urban waters program, their trout-friendly landscapes program. And it seems like such an area of opportunity within the Benton County area, especially as Benton County continues to grow and grow, that we can get ahead of it and really help build this robust program that can prevent pollutants from entering our water systems. And we would be grateful for your consideration for it to help in the early stages. And something that's so important within the support is not only to help us convene this technical advisory group, but as well as to serve as match funding for if we're to apply for grants, because many of our granting sources, such as the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board and other grantors, like to see both local buy-in and as well like to see or often require matches within our applications for restoration.
Thank you. Pat? You're muted, Pat.
I was on the Benton Soil and Water Conservation District Board when the notion of co-locating environmentally focused groups. Glad you're kind of rejoining as a major partner. What's the timetable on the building there on 2nd Street, or a range of timetables maybe?
Yeah, I think the latest estimate I heard was 2022, but I think that that's still, the latest estimate of the earliest possible time frame. But I think that right now Alan's currently going through, I believe, the permitting process as well as continuing with construction. And I think the building is well underway, but as far as the timetable, I think that it's maybe we'll have a better idea here moving forward. But it may be a few years out still.
I know Alan Ayers a little bit, and he's an impressive builder, but he's also a lot of times working by himself. So on the cooperation front, are you doing anything with the OSU folks?
I'm sorry, either my internet cut out there. I missed the first part of that last question.
Hey, I was curious as far as your partnering. Are you doing anything with people at OSU?
Yeah, we are working both with our Oak Creek stakeholder engagement project or process. We have a number of representatives from OSU, both from OSU Extension as well as OSU Rangeland, a few different departments. There are so many different departments at OSU that are really working within a stakeholder engagement process at the university as really touching on so many different facets and arms. And then as well, with our trout-friendly landscapes program, we have a few individuals from Oregon State who work within urban waters and green stormwater retention and within watershed restoration that are interested in and able to serve on a technical advisory team if we're able to continue that. So, and then we also work with OSU on a few different other facets of our programming too.
Great. And earlier in your presentation, you mentioned the cooperative nature of the 5 watershed councils, and I was glad to hear that as a person in the Lucky Mute system. So I deal with those folks on a regular basis. So, and it makes sense since all our streams end up in the Willamette. So appreciate
Yeah, and so many. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry if I was talking over. Yeah, it's in so many of we have so many shared landowners, and especially with the Marys and the Luckadee, there are so many shared. They're very similar stream systems too, and there's just so much to be learned from each other as well. And actually, our assistant project manager, Aubrey Cloud, he works half-time with Marys River Watershed Council and half-time with the Luckadee Watershed Council. So also areas for shared services and shared opportunities. And yeah, I'm really grateful to have the other watershed councils in Willamette is have that partnership to help learn from and to help work with.
What was the name of the person that you share with the Lucky Mute?
Aubrey Cloud, he started in June with the Marys River and May with the Luckadee as our assistant project manager is shared. We ended up actually separately going through recruiting processes, but it ended up working out perfectly finding. And yeah, so Aubrey has been helping us on our staff with our planting work. He's been helping to lead the plantings and been dealing with that in county works. And as well, he's leading our knotweed treatment program and the Luckadee knotweed treatment program that's to come, and a number of different programs.
So. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Holly this morning about Marys River Watershed Council's work?
Not really a question, but just thank you for the work that you all do, and thank you for this good report. And I'll just mention that the Ruth Starker Arts Park, that whole pond situation is, I can't even tell you how much more beautiful and relaxing and practically magical that area is now. And my kids love to go and sit on the rocks and poke sticks in the water, and it's amazing now. We love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that you all are enjoying it.
Another great collaboration, a lot of partners. So yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Holly. Appreciate hearing the work you're doing, and looking forward to hearing again from you next year.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving on. We are going to move into a discussion about the American Rescue Plan funds. Mary Otley and Joe will lead that discussion, and we each received a document from Mary, I think last Friday, about this, and to just kind of jumpstart the discussion, but we'll let Mary and Joe frame it.
Commissioners, I'll just jump in real quick. As you're aware, Congress did pass the American Rescue Plan. That is That does have funding in it for Benton County as well as all of the communities within Benton County. That information is still forthcoming as to many details as to how the money can be spent. We do have some summary information for you that Mary did share in the email and the documents she sent out on Friday. Our real intent is just to begin generating conversation with the board as to how we may go about making decisions to allocate this money. Benton County will receive about $18 million from this particular legislation based on what we know today. Mary will go in more of the details, but really for me it's important that we engage in this conversation early so that we can begin planning and deciding how we go about allocating the money. We're not asking you to allocate the money this morning. I can tell you, however, we have begun to get a number of inquiries from folks around the community asking how that money is going to be spent and whether or not they can potentially have a share of it. So just be aware that there is a lot of interest that this money is garnering, and the sooner we can go through the process of deciding, the better off we'll be in terms of being able to manage expectations. That doesn't mean we need to run out and spend the money tomorrow, but we do want to begin the dialogue today and ask for your feedback and input so that we can begin to have a longer-term planning strategy. So with that being said, Mary, why don't you jump in?
Sure, thank you, Joe. And good morning, Commissioners. I don't know who's in charge, but can someone make me the presenter? Excuse me. Thanks, Joe, and good morning. And I'm going to share my screen. There you go. We're actually starting at the last page of the document that I sent to you this weekend, just to a recap of what funding we've received and could be receiving in the next several years. And you can see that this new money, this new allocation of 18 million is, makes our other two sources of revenue much, put them in perspective, that we've received almost $7 million in CARES and CARES-related type funding in the past year. We know we've been allocated $6 million in FEMA. We haven't even come close to spending that money at this point in time. We're using the FEMA funds to respond to the vaccination clinics, and we've now started also paying for the call center and the contact tracing out of FEMA funds as well. FEMA is now, rather than normal FEMA allocations, is 75% that they would cover, and this point in time they're covering 100% of the cost. So we're dedicating, we're targeting all our expenditures in response to COVID to be FEMA reimbursed. So it is reimbursable. We won't receive that funding up front. The 18 million, well, let's talk about first of all, where we spent the CARES funds. A lot of different pots of money. The sheriff got some money. I think they bought some trailers. We had a block grant. We actually had an $85,000 block grant that was the one that they couldn't figure out how to spend, and so we gave 80,000 of it back, so we had 5,000 that we actually distributed. Fairgrounds received some funding. Elections received funding. Of course, public health, the clinic. And then we had that late in the game allocation from the governor that all went out to small businesses. And then the 3.6 that was the CARES Act. And we just finished drawing down all of our CARES funding. So we are done now being reimbursed for CARES. Are there any questions on what's happened in the past before we go to what's going to happen in the future?
Can you tell us a little bit more about the block grant where we actually returned money? In what way was that restricted that we?
Yeah, Kate could explain it. It was like the level 2 that we couldn't get an agreement on how we could spend it, and the restrictions were so tight that no one wanted to apply, so we actually returned it.
Okay. Okay, now I remember. Thank you. Small
It was
business.
right on last fall, back and forth and back and forth. Yeah.
Yep, that was with the state, yes.
All right, so now let's go back to page 1 and talk about just some discussion points. And you all, page 2 and 3 explained. And that's really the only explanation right now we have is to the restrictions of what we can do with these funds. We can respond to mitigate the health emergency. We also have FEMA funds to do that, so I'm not really sure where the crossover is for that. But the sense that really gets to me is how our state and local activities are not limited only to those activities, which is a response to COVID, but it doesn't really say what we can do. So we're still waiting. And we do have until 2024 to spend the funds, but and as more information comes out, we'll share that with you. But right now, it's pretty open. If we have to respond to the COVID emergency, I think we're going to be hard pressed to spend $18 million on county operations of any kind. So but we can recoup lost revenues. And what I saw in that is we have to compare our revenues collections to a full fiscal year prior to the pandemic. So we would have to go to, I think, back to 2019, fiscal year 2019, and compare 2020, which was only 3 months into COVID, really, so it was only a quarter. So I don't know if we get to go quarter by quarter, or if we have to go fiscal year by fiscal year. But I think there's some makeup of revenue, but I'm waiting again for some direction on how we match the revenue and document the loss in revenue. But I believe that's a good place to start, is our loss of revenues. We've had some departments that actually have not lost revenue. In fact, they've had a better year than they had prior. Records, because of the low interest rates, everyone was refinancing, so their revenue is up. I do believe building division of community development is also up because there's a lot of construction going on in it. And a lot of that had to do, again, with the low interest rates. And so folks were out building things. So we do have, and then there are other places in the county that indeed we can show the loss in revenues. And this one, we can make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. I know Gary, I think he's on the line, he's asking for some help with the small service districts that we fund, because that would go out to our rural communities, because it's in Alsea, Alpine, Hidden Valley, and I think there's one more. South Third is not involved in that, but again, that's our service districts. We can actually put some money in that. We can transfer the funds to a private nonprofit, and also transportation. So we can look at our special transportation program. I think we can put some funds towards that. The city of Corvallis, in the initial CARES, I think got $7 million for a transportation package, and we received maybe I don't think we even received $100,000 that went to our transportation, but we did receive some funding.
Mary, we received $250,000 or something in that, but it wasn't quite the same as Corvallis's $7 million.
No, it wasn't. So I think we can put some money towards that. Also, premium pay for folks responding to the COVID. This is an area that I think a lot of conversation has to happen before we make that kind of allocation. So I know it's on our radar, but we don't know how to equitably do this, and that's a conversation that has to be had over time. And the only thing they really said we couldn't do is we couldn't take this money and send it to PERS to buy down our pension debt, in case you wanted to. So that's the guidance, and every time someone says, here's some new guidance, it says the same thing over and over again. So until I see some really new guidance, this is what we know at this time. So back to... Excuse me, Commissioner?
I listened in on a call last week hoping that I would hear fresh new guidance, and basically what they were saying is that Treasury is working through it all, and they're doing so slowly and methodically, so they were not optimistic they'd have anything out for another couple, 3 weeks anyway, because they don't want to have to correct their guidance multiple times. They'd rather get it right or close to it the first time.
Yeah, and if this is if the way they dealt with the CARES and the moving target we had with that, this is going to be interesting because it's a lot more money. And I think other governments are having the same issues as we are, is what is it we can do? And we need some, we don't want to do the wrong thing and have to pay it back. So we'll just wait. But for the immediate time, there's some questions we can answer so that we know as we build the budget where we want to go there. I think probably we should go to number 2 to start with. Do you feel we should fund operations with this, or should we use it for one-time or leverage projects that will actually reduce operational costs out into the future?
That's easy. At least in my book, I think that we should be using this money to fund one-time investments and as leverage rather than to fund operations, since this is not recurring money. And the only exceptions to that would be if we do some backfill or pay some bonuses. Those obviously are not, they are one-time, but they are much more operational.
Yeah, Mary, I would agree with that. I'm glad that Congress learned from the CARES Act to not put a tight deadline on spending money. So one of my questions is, U.S. Treasury is required to pay the first tranche to counties. Any idea what that means as far as percent of the total, or is that some more?
No, I believe it's half of it. So within 60 days, we should get $9 million. That will be before the end of the biennium.
We obviously don't have enough information to really firm things up, but this is one-time money, even though we have 3 3/4 years to spend it. So that gives us some flexibility of not thinking of it entirely as one-time money, but you mentioned the word leverage, and I think that's a good concept to keep in mind. But and you asked about backfilling, and I know the TLT tax was. Do we have a full year that we can? I think we do. That we can compare that to.
Now we have 2 quarters that started in. We received the first funding for the quarter July through September of 19.
Okay.
So we have some quarters. That's why I'm hoping we can parse it out to what's happening. So yeah, we don't even have a full year of TLT.
Okay.
And I know the clinics, I think we can find, I know we can find lost revenue in the clinics for sure, but so.
Yeah, it will be good to get the guidance from Treasury on how to calculate that. That'll give us a better idea.
Yeah.
And at least we have the city historical record of transient lodging tax to serve as a guidepost, and we could make some inferences based on that data. But yeah, Nancy, do you have comments on those first couple of points?
In general, I agree with what Commissioner Ozro said about not funding ongoing operations. And so we're just commenting on the first couple ones, right? And then we're kind of going through. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll hold the rest of my comments in.
Yeah. the highlighted ones I needed, as we get ready for the budget, if we have a decision made on these, at least it would help inform the budget development, is really what I was looking for. And before we get to the other one is, I do believe there's some requests in our current CIP that might qualify, and so, again, they would be one-time costs. I know one of them is to bring broadband connect our fairgrounds with the sunset buildings, and that's in the CIP request now. And I think that's something that will leverage us forward, particularly as we're looking forward as using the fairgrounds as a emergency operations center. Right now we can't because we don't have the infrastructure there to do that. So
that's a logical
other CIP things.
That's a logical use, given the call out for broadband and for infrastructure that is not that has long-term benefits. So, Mary, do you want to keep going through, or can we comment on these next?
Yeah, now we'll start back at the top. The additional compensation to staff.
I think you made that point that it's. I would love to do this. There are certainly people that have worked above and beyond over the past year, but there are also questions of equity. So for me, it's really a matter of how we might provide some additional compensation, and I would love to hear what alternatives there might be. And Nancy, you had your mic on too.
Yeah, I was just going to wholeheartedly agree with that. Yes, businesses are affected in governments, but it's people. People are the ones that are affected, and especially people who are not, at the top of the food chain, so to speak. My husband and I have experienced that ourselves. Him, before I was in this position, us living off of his single income, and he got emergency funding or increased pay for 1 month, and that made a huge difference for our family. And when it went away, it was definitely noticeable. So having seen what a big difference it can make, I definitely think we should investigate something along those lines.
Commissioners, this would be something that I would suggest we would coordinate with the city, especially as it relates to compensation for folks working in the EEOC. So it's not an issue that I brought up with Mark Shepard at this point, but that would be one of the due diligence pieces we would do as we explore this topic, if you're so interested in doing that.
Yes, from my standpoint.
All right.
Mary, Commissioner Malone, did you comment on this topic?
I didn't have anything else to add. One comment was just not being in a hurry. We don't have enough information. I think my arithmetic says the first money should come in mid-May, and I realize the pressure of assembling our budget, but this seems a little, the information from the Treasury seems a little sketchy at this point, and to try to firm anything up on our end seems premature. But as far as additional item number 3, additional compensation, that makes a lot of sense. We've asked people quite a few people to do double duty this past year, and some kind of recognition, I think, is appropriate. The trick is just how to do that fairly.
And one thing I failed to mention to you is how we're going to account for these funds. We're actually going to set up a special revenue fund, so they will be in their own fund. So it'll be very mindful. And for the budget, you're going to see a very simple budget for this fund, in that there'll be revenue in, interest earnings, and then expenses out that balance to 18 million, a beginning balance of something, another 9 million that will come in a year from now. So it's going to be a bare bones budget. It'll take care of the legal thing, and then we'll work on the details as we know more. So that's how you're going to see it as a budget committee. All right, number 4, should we fund outside agencies? And if so, what processes should we use? So we did fund outside agencies with the first CARES Act, and we did nonprofits, we did small businesses. We didn't do broadband during that one because there was no time in the world to do that and do it well. Now we have a little more time to be mindful. And then we used, the county gave the funds or transferred the funds to organizations to actually do the allocations for us. And so looking for some direction on if we go this route, how would you like to go about it?
There's so much in this one to think about. And the other D that we could put in here, well, there are a couple, are the water infrastructure and also the cultural organizations. So personally, I would like to think again about our 2040 Driving Communities values and some of our priorities. I want to spend on broadband infrastructure to help improve our service levels and address any gaps we have across the county. But we are still waiting for that Economic Development Authority grant to land in Lincoln County to do the market and engineering feasibility study. Once we have that, we'll have a much better sense for what the true need is and where we can get the greatest bang for the buck. There is also a lot of other money that's coming down the pike for broadband infrastructure. So I'm not sure whether this is the best leverage dollars to use or whether there might be some other leverage money. I've also been thinking about on the nonprofit side, one of the biggest focuses that we have right now is dealing with unhoused in our communities, and that I would like to be able to, if we direct some money to nonprofits, provide some incentive or matching or leverage funds to address the priorities that are coming out of the Hope Advisory Board plan that hopefully will be approved by the city and the county in the next few months. And we could do that through either the Benton Community Foundation or possibly through the Community Services Consortium as a 190 organization. So there are different avenues that we could take to invest some of those funds to provide significant leverage to achieve those goals. Small business, there's so much other money coming down the pike right now that I don't know what's needed. So on that one, part of what I've been interested in is potentially maybe setting aside some money and then watching, because we do have more than 3 years to spend this, almost 4, and we need to see where the need is going to be and what we can do most strategically.
I switched to a Word document so I can take notes. So now you see we've now increased 4. Make sure I captured the whole.
I'll send you my notes too after.
Okay.
Should I go? Sorry.
Yep.
I say yes to nonprofits and small businesses. I would like to know more about the broadband infrastructure before making that a priority.
Yeah, there is funding in the bill. There's a lot of other things that are being funded, and broadband is one of them, as well as the schools are getting money for also broadband, so we need to coordinate all of these so that we're actually getting the best use of all these funds and get them where they belong.
And there is a broadband action team for Benton County with all of those parties at the table. And those groups have all been participating in this EDA efforts to do this engineering feasibility study. So I think we really need to work with that broadband action team. Adam Lutz is our lead person there, but also have staff from the Council of Governments and from the Economic Development Office that are sitting in on those meetings regularly. So I think that there's a process for broadband to help determine what we might do beyond that fairgrounds link that you've already expressed.
Couple comments, Mary. Another reason to not be in a hurry is the state is doing the same process we are, and probably not as efficiently, but it would. I think the information that we've got so far is the current state budget's in pretty good shape, and probably the next 2-year budget that they're developing as we speak, as far as what I've heard so far, is doing fairly well, but you never know what's going to come out of that, and so that would be another reason to not be in a hurry. On the broadband, back to the CIP, there's significant dollars going to be spent not only with new connections, but starting to replace the existing system, and that's I think going from memory, maybe 500,000 per budget cycle for the foreseeable future. So there are different pots of money coming into that, but we do have significant needs.
Yeah, Commissioner, as we're putting the budget together, one of the things we have done is we've taken the IT request so that we have capital set aside for our aging infrastructure, that we have added, I think, $75,000 a year for a biennial, it's a year, to be cost allocated across all departments. So we are mindfully putting money aside for that. This would be a good jump start. We could actually put this money in and hold off on it. But if we have to spend it in order to do it, we can't just put it aside. So we are mindfully paying attention to the replacement of our existing infrastructure in the current budget that you'll see soon. All right, so after we get past the outside agencies, looking internally, how are we going to determine what we need? Are we going to ask, obviously we'll go to the departments and ask what requests they have that might meet some criteria. I think we need to develop the criteria and then reach out to departments. And again, the county service districts, I think right now, right off the top, we should take care of them. And I know that we're having a study done. We actually initiated the consultant starting last year. And I think, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've actually finished reports on 1 or 2 of them.
Good morning, Commissioners. Actually, we have the physical assessments done on everybody but South Third. But South Third, as you know, is operated by Corvallis or through Corvallis. So we know the sum total of the physical improvements that we are looking at for those districts. And that last district that Mary couldn't remember is Cascade View. But for Alsea and Alpine, they are the 3 districts. There's water, sewer, and Alsea, and then sewer and Alpine. They are in great need, and it looks like sum total for those are about $1.4 million just for those districts there, and that would make them all whole, at least on the infrastructure side. which would be very, very helpful because a couple of those systems are, they're well past their design life, let's just say that. So.
I would be very supportive of using these funds to address those issues because as you say, those systems are well past their design life. We don't know when they're going to fail, but if they fail, that's a big problem. And that would be very helpful to be able to avoid those problems if at all possible.
And you know, there could be other county needs come up, but that would probably should put county allocation prior for it. So as you go through your analysis, if there's something that comes to mind, let me know. We'll add it to the list. And then one of the...
Barry, I just want to interject real quick to give another example that could relate to infrastructure. That's not necessarily something that has been proposed or that we have an official project on, but if you go back to the water infrastructure discussion, we are meeting with the city of Adair and Corvallis here in the next couple of weeks. There will be a second or third conversation about a potential tie from the city of Adair to Corvallis so that they would have a interconnection for water distribution purposes. This does currently center around a particular subdivision that's been proposed, which would kind of be the first link to be established in terms of the broader view of the connection. But projects like that are millions of dollars, and so my point being is that we really need to be coordinating with the other communities where we have joint projects that have been at least conceived and have a dialogue with them so that we can compare notes, leverage dollars together. Every community, for example, Corvallis is receiving $13 million. The other communities, Adair and Philomath, are only receiving 150, 200,000. City of Philomath, Monroe and Adair are receiving probably 150 to 200,000. Philomath is receiving a little over $1 million, I think. So anyway, point being is we should try and leverage these dollars for joint projects with the other communities.
And Mary, when it comes to how the allocations are determined overall, I think that getting a sense for the big buckets is important with the board, and then there will be different, and putting together a set of criteria. And we've mentioned leverage again and again with one-time opportunities that can set a trajectory for investments or bring in other money. And then we might have different allocation or decision-making processes for different buckets, like internal investments in the Capital Improvement Committee. It may be that we, after setting aside a bucket for a particular use, we would use the Community Foundation or DSB or some other entity with pieces of it. I think part of my question is whether we should put together those large buckets as a board, or whether we should do it with our budget committee as a whole to help get that public perspective from our community members that serve on our budget committee as we go through the process.
Another wild card or variable, I think Congress is serious about it, infrastructure package, large package, and I'm guessing, but I think we should have some idea by summer if that how real that is, how likely that is to get all the way through Congress, but that could really affect which projects come out of this fund and like Sam mentioned, the word leverage was used, and that's another serious amount of money that's potentially headed this way, and once again, uncertain, but I think it has at least a 50-50 chance of actually getting through Congress, and so maybe that's where some of these projects that we've talked about could get either additional funding or total funding.
That's a good point. I concur. Other thoughts? I'm grateful that we're starting the conversation. I think, Mary, as you pointed out, we don't need to rush. And I think it's important with these funds to not hurry to commit and to be deliberative about it. One area where I do see potentially some near-term need is for some of the smaller cultural organizations that are event-based, that in the lack of events in the past year, may be having a really hard time holding a budget together. But one of those is the Corvallis Fall Festival. I'm not sure how the Balloon Frolic is doing, or the Renaissance Fair out in Sally, or whether our own fair might need a boost. But those types of community fiber, community building events are something I think we should keep an eye on, and they may need help sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think once decisions are made on whether the events are going to be held, I think that a lot of them are still on hold. All right. Well, this was, I'm glad to have the discussion, and as we know more, or any of you hear anything, I know different organizations are coming out with different advisories, but they all go back to the same thing. It's still really the same 4 or 5 points, and with not a lot of clarification.
Mary, I'll just read it. The U.S. Treasury is required to pay the first tranche to counties not later than 60 days after enactment, and you said that was 50% should hit us mid-May. But is it your understanding that that money has the same December 31st, 2024 deadline as the second payment that comes in next year?
I read it that the funds have to, and I don't know if it's spent or committed, so that's another direction. I don't know if we actually really have to have the money spent on something tangible, or if we can have a project started that we could finish later on. So that's the whole direction. But the 12/2024, I do believe is the deadline of some sort. What does that mean? I don't know yet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Mary before we move on?
Commissioners, Mary and I will continue to have a dialogue in the background, and we'll update you in the course of the next 2 to 4 weeks on this topic as more information becomes available. Currently, we're really focused on getting the budget balanced for you, for the not only you, but the citizen members of the budget committee. And so that is our main focus, but we wanted to also kind of do a litmus test with you, which is what occurred this morning, to help give us some guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item before us is our update from our partners in economic development, the Small Business Development Center, Ringing Boundary. But I would like to propose that we take a 5-minute break before we jump into that next piece of work. So thank you for your indulgence. calling back in. Nancy, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Then, as long as Erica's ready, we shall resume with our Economic Development Partners update. Kate, do you want to set the stage?
That'd be great. Thank you, Commissioner Ogerow. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everyone on this fine Tuesday. So we wanted to bring before you the external partners that are funded with the economic development money that you all provide as a pass-through to us. I think the partnership's been going really well, and I realize, though, with COVID, it had been a while since you had seen their smiling faces and heard about all the great work that they've been doing through this crisis. So we thought we'd take a bit of time today. So we've got about 45 minutes with you, and what we're going to do is we've got each of the three organizations, Oregon Rain, the Corvallis Foundry, and Small Business Development Center online and ready to talk with you. And they've got about maybe 15 minutes of presentation, maybe a little bit less, and then a little bit of time for Q&A for each of them. And then I just have a little bit of information at the end to wrap up. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Caroline Cummings with Oregon Rain, and I'll let her take it from here.
Thank you, Kate, and good morning, Commissioners Malone, Ogerow, and Wise, and staff. It's really great to see you all. I look forward to when we can do this in person, hopefully soon. But it's wonderful to see you. I was looking back at the last time we presented to you, and it was almost exactly 2 years ago to the day. It was March 26th. Time felt like it flew, and then this last year felt like it went on forever. So we're excited to be invited to share some updates. I'm Caroline Cummings, the Executive Director and CEO of Oregon Rain. Corey Wright is with me. He's your dedicated venture catalyst for the Lynn and Benton region. We have some slides that we're going to share. Corey, oh, I see, Corey, you've pulled those up. You can skip to the next one since I just did the introductions. And I know a couple of you, in particular Commissioners Malone and Ogerow, know us really well from having worked with us for a while, and Commissioner Wise, you being new on board, and I know you are probably aware of our work through the reports we've submitted and also some of the support that we've provided to Corvallis over the years. But I just wanted to take a quick minute and remind everybody who we are, what we do, and why we do it. We exist really for these three things. We are a 501c3. We catalyze entrepreneurial ecosystems. We connect entrepreneurs to resources, whatever that might be that they need, capital, people, events, programs, spaces, especially overlooked entrepreneurs. And ultimately, this contributes to the creation of prosperous economies. And this is our vision, that communities will support, value, and celebrate entrepreneurs, and Benton County has done an excellent job of doing that. Regional leaders recognize that entrepreneurs actually are the primary creator of net new jobs in the county and the region. Small and rural communities have thriving economies, and a culture of possibilities is embraced. And here's our philosophy, that really 4 tenets that we operate from. One, our work is led by entrepreneurs. Everybody on the Oregon Rain team, we are all entrepreneurs. We've all started and ran our own companies. Some of us have had exits, and some of us are actually investing our own money into startups. I'm one of those. Also, long-term commitment. The work that we're doing to build entrepreneurial economies, and we do this through extensive partnerships, you have to have this long-term commitment. And there's plenty of research and books on this, startup communities in particular. Long-term commitment is 10 to 20 years. It has to be inclusive of anyone who wants to participate. So Corey and I like to say we always try and default to yes whenever possible when we're supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs. And lastly, this one's been a little bit harder to do in person over the last year, but we've done an incredible job virtually, is really engaging your community with entrepreneurial events, and Corey's going to talk about that later. So here's our view of an entrepreneurial ecosystem. We monitor these 10 elements, and Kate shared the report with all of you. There's a scorecard. We score the Benton County entrepreneurial ecosystem on an annual basis. These are the 10 things that we're tracking. I'm not going to speak about each one individually, but this is what Corey is doing in your region, is making sure that all 10 of these elements are singing together and are there. We track gaps. We work with partners to fill those gaps. And then on an annual basis, you get to see how we move the needle, and Corey will share that report as well. And then, of course, we couldn't do this without your support, not just your funding support, but your support in every way. It does take a village to raise an entrepreneur, and that's why I love that Kate has pulled all of these economic development partners together, because it's important we're all working together. And here's who's funding us. You may recall that 8 of the rural cities in the Lynn and Benton region banded together a couple of years ago and formed a partnership, and we do this work regionally, so Ben and Linton together. All 8 of those rural cities have funded our work. Benton County, of course, so thank you again for that. Lynn County, and then other funders are the Ford Family Foundation, Oregon Community Foundation, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Business Oregon via CARES Act money recently, and then Banner Bank. You did a lot of talking earlier about leveraging funding, which was really great to hear. And I just wanted you all to know that for every dollar Benton County put in, we raised another $5.45 to support and build capacity for the region. Next slide. Now I'm going to hand it over to Corey. He's going to talk more about the actual boots on the ground work that he's been doing. Corey. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Commissioners Audro and Malone, great to see you. It's been a really long time, and Commissioner Wise, I don't think we've interacted too much, but look forward to getting to know you as well. So yeah, happy to be here. So let's hop into the deliverables. So I won't spend a lot of detail on these, but if you have specific questions about any of these, it should have been in the reports and packets that you're sent, please, just interrupt me. But I'd like to highlight that we worked with 52 different partners around both the region and the entire state, supported and collaborated with them to support your entrepreneurs and Oregon entrepreneurs in general. We completed the 3 surveys. We were required to do 2. We identified 50 total target entrepreneurs and small business owners, 27 of whom were rural. We were able to help and provide assistance to 61. And then 22 entrepreneurs I worked with specifically to prepare them for talks with funders, mostly equity funders, a few for like grants for SBIR, or STTR loans, but we were able to achieve that metric as well. Conducted a lot of events. Now, part of this is because we were virtual, and so there's less time with me driving around everywhere and more time behind a computer screen hosting workshops. But I broke it down a little bit for you. So we had 141 activities that supported the Lynn-Benton region, and 42 were specifically for Benton County entrepreneurs. One metric that we had a little tougher time hitting was we were wanting to host angel investor workshops too over this MOU period. And of course, because of COVID, that got canceled. Normally, we like to have high net worth individuals come, we wine them, we dine them, and then we talk about what it's like to be an angel investor in Oregon and just provide education. And we weren't able to do that in person. However, back in 2019, we did do one in Albany, which we actually had a lot of Benton County high net worth individuals attend that. And then we recently, this month, hosted an online one as well. So we kept Kate up to date on that metric. And similarly, as far as new angel investors, because we weren't able to host as many events to sort of draw new potential angels out of the woodwork, we were only able to identify 3 new Benton-based potential angels. So we definitely appreciate any help you can provide in connecting us with people who are interested in investing in local startups. We were able to identify 20 new mentors to assist Benton County entrepreneurs and small businesses during this MOU, and 13 new were identified and 20 were developed to actually help startups. So we've been working really hard. I'm not an expert at everything. Caroline's not necessarily an expert at everything. She mostly is. But we try to find other people that can assist and bring their areas of expertise to the business. Caroline's going to talk about this slide.
Thanks, Corey. One of the things we're really proud of is bringing the gender gap, right? Filling that gender divide. When I first started in your region about 4.5 years ago, it was 80% male, 20% female that we were finding from mentors. And that's pretty standard across the board. It is increasing a lot, especially over the last 2 years. And we're really proud to say we've moved the needle a little bit there. So 34% of the mentors in Benton County are female and 66% are male. Most of those male mentors are coming from the Corvallis region. And then on the entrepreneur side, this one I'm super proud of. Typically, you get 70% male, 30% female when we're working with entrepreneurs in particular in the early stage space. And we have almost gotten to 50-50. We're 44% female and 56% male. Next slide. And Corey's going to speak to this one.
Yeah, so over this last MOU, 57% of the entrepreneurs that reached out to us were from Corvallis, 43% were rural. And I just wanted to highlight that we do prioritize rural. We don't necessarily do active outreach to Corvallis entrepreneurs, although we would love to in the future. There's a really strong need out there. We get a lot of Corvallis entrepreneurs, a lot of OSU students approaching us. One OSU student who actually now lives in rural just reached out to me today. She just posted her app on LinkedIn. She's getting feedback. Right, so there's a lot of activity happening, especially coming out of the university. But I just wanted to highlight that we prioritize rural, but we also don't say no to anyone, right? So if a Corvallis entrepreneur comes to an event or seeks help or wants a connection, my goal is to help all entrepreneurs no matter where they are, what they look like, or where they come from. So just wanted to highlight that as far as the metrics of Benton County entrepreneurs. Here's just a few photos from rural events that we did. Over on the left, we did a celebration event in Monroe. Over on the right, again in Monroe, we did a marketing strategy workshops, one of many events that we did. Here's some from Philomet, some different pub talks, some marketing seminars, some connection seminars. I think several of you attended our, well, that was the previous MOU, but our event back at Nectar Creek, which glad that Nectar Creek is still making their meet again, because it's tasty stuff, and hopefully we can find an awesome venue for that build. Last summer, which feels like it was this year, but 2020, we quickly pivoted to try to assist businesses that were having a tough time with COVID-19, because everything really moved online, and sales, which are the driver of any business, really declined for a lot of folks. So we launched quickly a 10-week-long sales and marketing accelerator. And so we brought in experts from like some of Oregon's fastest growing companies, from OSU, from various businesses around the region, and they basically taught sales and marketing, not all focused online, but strongly focused on getting businesses online and teaching them how to get more customers and bring in more revenue. So we were able to, we had over 100 applicants apply, 72 people graduated that program, including 12 from Benton County. We had people from all around Oregon attend that. And then we were also able to get some Business Oregon funding and did sort of an after, pre, or post program where we worked with Ambo Media out of Portland and helped businesses get landing pages made and connected to Google Analytics, connected to Google Ads, to continue trying to help them basically, you know, get revenue during a really challenging time. And so I believe, I forget the exact numbers, it's in one of our reports, but it was similarly around 12 entrepreneurs got free landing pages and more from Benton County. So there's some videos on the slides. I'll let you guys take a look at this one on your own time. Lots of media articles. We always track what's going on with respect to the Lynn Benton startup ecosystem. You can see John Marr in there. I think some of you have met him. There's different posts about RAIN, about Benton County Economic Development District, about different entrepreneurs. And so we actually noticed a slight uptick in media articles about startups, which is great. So Caroline and I wanted to share just a quick video. It's only 2 minutes of some entrepreneurs actually talking and sharing about what it's like working.
Hi, I'm John Marr, founder of Varleo. We're an augmented reality company and we make magical experiences. So my company would not exist, not at all, if it were not for Oregon Rain. Oregon Rain, from the very beginning, taught me how to think about my company, how to vocalize what we're doing, how to define what we're trying to do, and how to pitch the idea to potential investors. Through their training, I did pitch to an investor and secured a $300,000 investment. There are a lot of incubators out there, and Oregon Rain was refreshingly different. They just came and said, hey, you come from a small town, we love that. You're starting a business, we love that. Let us give you the tools, let us give you the wisdom, because it's good for the community. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't take any ownership. There was no sales pitchiness in it. It was just the joy of entrepreneurship. And it was so refreshingly different that I was all in. And it shaped my future. It changed everything for me. So I sure hope, wherever this video goes, whatever decision makers are seeing this video, I really hope you keep Oregon Rain going, because people like me couldn't make it without them.
Hi, my name is Christina Wickerton. I am just overwhelmed by the amazing support that I've gotten from Oregon Rain. Corey Wright, Lynn Benton, Venture Catalyst, has been so amazing and so helpful with my businesses. He's helped me bring them to the next level. COVID-19 has been really challenging. I reached out to Corey, and what did he do? He emailed me back immediately and offered support and resources for COVID-19. I want to say 2 words to Oregon Rain. Thank you.
So, Commissioners, I have to apologize. I was supposed to put a 2-minute video in there, and I accidentally had our 5-minute video in there. So I'll share those links with you later. We did have some other Benton County entrepreneurs we wanted to highlight, but hopefully that gives you a sense. Those entrepreneurs were from Philomath and Monroe, respectively. So some just observations about the startup community in general, especially in light of COVID-19, and especially if there's ever any future grant funding available for small businesses. One thing to note is that businesses and startups that formed in late 2019 or very early 2020 were impacted by COVID-19 as much as existing businesses in many senses, with respect to like getting sales, to growing, to even finding investor capital. But they were basically left out or ineligible for a lot of the CARES Act funding, which was a big, tough spot on them. Because like, oh, you had a great business plan, you're all set to go, you had customers lined up, you launched in November with a new restaurant or whatever, and then like, well, you weren't in business early enough to get it, but you still aren't getting the sales you need. So that was a challenge. The technology skills, that's why we did the the Rainmaker program. I'll talk about financial literacy in a sec with our What's Next. We've also, I'm sure everyone's feeling this, a high level of what we call Zoom fatigue. And so mental health is something that has been, I think, a struggle for many entrepreneurs, given that creating a business is already so stressful, and then you add a once-in-a-lifetime experience on top of that, and it's pretty challenging. We have launched or hosted a lot of mental health workshops with psychiatrists and doctors and people experiencing that to try to support the community, but still observing the effects of that. Because of all these different impacts, we noticed a slight reduction in involvement from startup champions, entrepreneurs that were typically, supporting startups and other entrepreneurs. They were now focused on taking care of themselves and their family and surviving the current crisis. And so there's a little reduction in that. And then in general, I think we are starting to see a need for shareable commercial kitchen space, and then also a lot of apparel and fashion, sort of consumer product-based startups that could potentially have a use for like a shared flex manufacturing, shared apparel space, something like that. So we're going to look into doing some feasibility studies for that last one. This is your entrepreneur ecosystem scorecard. So you guys gained 3 points this last year. Happy to highlight things if you want to go into detail, but in general, we noticed that the section where government leaders demonstrated willingness to amend policies to support the ecosystem went up. Kudos to Kate's organization for, of all the different organizations I work with, I saw her working a lot to sort of change policies and procedures to help businesses during these challenging times. More media coverage, slight increase in capital. There's still about a $12 million capital gap. In other words, how much money or funds entrepreneurs want and need to grow their business. And then we've also noticed that the type of products entrepreneurs are making are, in general, there's strong market demand for those, which is great. There's a Benton County 6-month report that you should have gotten in your packets. Happy to address any questions there. Of course, you'll get one in July for the last 6 months that we're in currently. Just over on the left, that's Jenny that I mentioned with HazAdapt. I've been helping her as she needs it, connect with funders and startups. So she just launched her app. So if anyone wants to help her out with that, let me know. I can send you it. So we always like to say, what's next? And so we are launching. We're really excited about this. It's starting next Wednesday, actually. And so I got a lot on my plate this week to cross all the T's, dot all the I's. But we're launching a moneymaker program along with having a Spanish cohort for it. And this is really based off of a huge need for financial literacy that we observed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so there's a lot of entrepreneurs, they didn't have profit and loss statements, they didn't have balance sheets when they went to apply for CARES Act funding. And so it was challenging for them to get that funding. And so we're trying to address this by providing training that's very hands-on, very low-key, non-intimidating. A lot of people get intimidated when it comes to financial statements. And that's shared by, or taught by experienced business owners and past entrepreneurs. So we have 14 of the applicants from Benton County. So that's 13% of our total applicants. You guys are the second largest county behind Lane taking this program. We're really excited about that. So I know I'm probably almost over time here, not over time. I forgot to reset my PowerPoint. But so fundraising, we're going to continue to do that to support the Benton entrepreneur ecosystem. We've got a decent amount to raise starting in July. We are currently doing a Rural City Start and Grow Here video series where we're working with the rural cities, and we're actually going to do one for the entire Benton region as well, to basically highlight why it's a great and up-and-coming place to create startups. We're going to be doing one-on-one support for entrepreneurs. It's normal. As soon as it's safe and appropriate and our community say, yes, we'd like to have you do in-person events, we'll start doing those again. And, we'll probably still do a mix of Zoom, but hopefully a lot more in person because I need to grab some beers with some entrepreneurs, and I think we probably all could handle doing that. Two last things is microgrant program development. We're hoping to be able to work on that. There is a strong need, especially for typically very rural, often financially underserved, often minority entrepreneurs, to basically provide them access to something as simple as a laptop, and then also like $700, $800 just to cover basic business expenses. And so we're hoping to bring that program, which we catalyzed into another nonprofit, but it sort of has stalled a little bit. We're hoping to bring that back in-house, and we've had indications from a lot of city leaders across the region that they would be interested in basically helping provide grant funding at a very small level to help new companies start businesses. And then we're also, just because I think you've probably heard us mention this before, I'm one person for 2 counties. We're going to be looking for an entrepreneur community, which is basically someone like that startup champion I mentioned. And then also, I'll start to transition to doing more Oregon range-wide stuff. And so we'll be looking for another venture catalyst at some point in July, August. So that is it. Sorry if I went over. We'd love to take your questions. And thank you for your support of innovation and entrepreneurship. I think there's a lot of great things happening in Benton County, a lot of cool startups coming down the pipeline, and so we'd love to see them succeed and create new jobs.
Thank you, Corey and Caroline. Pat, do you have a question?
Yeah, a couple comments. I really appreciate the rural emphasis. I think you were on our last topic, and broadband was mentioned regularly. I think of broadband as the roads of the 21st century, where 80 or 100 years ago, your business depended on roads getting from the rural areas for the town to do the selling. So I think that's really exciting, and I appreciate your pandemic pivot to, okay, we can't do in-person events. What can we do online to keep things moving? And shows we have to be flexible because we don't know what's coming next, and this was a big one. So I think you're on the right track there. I had a comment you mentioned, lack of commercial kitchen space for incubators, and I'm not sure if this fits in, but the fairground auditorium kitchen remodel that we've been talking about for a year or two is happening as we speak and should be finished middle to end of May. So there is, at least in theory, some possibility there. So appreciate
that. Yeah, that'll be great when that space comes online, and I'm in some of Kate's meetings where they've been updating on that. So yeah, I hope we absolutely, it would be awesome to leverage that for entrepreneurs and food and beverage start.
Well, and here's a bonus question: the Nectar Creek facility in Paloma, what's the status, and when is there going to be a little more activity there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kate might know that one better than me at the moment. Last I knew, there was an owner that had a company making natural wood finishes, and she had bought it, but then I think she also ran into some financial challenges and was trying to sell it. I don't know if she did or not. There's also an art company in Paloma that was interested in using it, but I don't think they quite have the budget for it.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, Caroline and Corey, thank you so much for presenting this to us. And thank you for setting the slides ahead of time. That's very helpful. And actually, in my 4 years as a city councilor with Corvallis, I got to be the liaison to the Economic Development Advisory Board, as well as the Economic Vitality Partnership. So I have been able to hear a little bit about some of the great work you all do in the past. I particularly liked the slide that you showed about bridging the gender gap. I think that's great. Do you track any sort of information on minorities or like the BIPOC communities representation?
Yes, we do.
We do. Sorry, we were both talking over each other. So actually, I'm really glad that you asked that question, Commissioner. So what we've been tracking is following the governor's equity framework. And in your report on page 12, we have the demographic data in there. And we break down rural, aging, older adult, so 31% are aging and older, 62%, this was for Benton, were rural. Economically disadvantaged, 25%, 19% Asian Pacific Islander, 12.5% veteran, 12.5% linguistically diverse, 12.5% Latinx Hispanic, and then the next four are all 6% Native American, member of a federally recognized tribe, American Indian, LGBTQ+, students, and green card or resident aliens. So we are tracking that, and we were tracking a little less than that, but now we just aligned with the governor's equity framework because it makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any other questions? Well, thank you. I appreciate the work you're doing and the incredible emphasis that you've put on the rural communities, and it shows that you're working there by the increase in entrepreneurial activity that's occurring, especially those small entrepreneurs.
Well, thank you all for your time and for your continued funding. As I mentioned, we really get to leverage your dollar, and we're shooting to do the same thing to raise another $5 to $6 for every dollar the county puts in, so that we can really build capacity in the region. So thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thank you, likewise.
Wonderful, thank you. And so, Commissioner Oshiro, then I'd like to move on if we could and have Brad Addis from Corvallis Foundry present.
Well, hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Good? Well, good, because I'm a perfect example of the broadband challenges we have across rural Oregon. I'm sitting in a parking lot in Hammond, Oregon, which is at the tip of the northern Oregon coast, and coming to you through my phone, trying to catch a Wi-Fi hotspot on Starbucks. So anyway, thank you again. You know, when this pandemic first hit, one of the things that we did, and so just for information, you know, Corvallis Foundry is our physical location and Foundry Collective is our organization. But when this first hit, we started up something called Let's Keep Connected, and it was a knee-jerk reaction to say, let's just find a place for people to chat. And in the first 4 months of the pandemic, we had over 60 Let's Keep Connected events. We had local, county, state, federal resources coming on board. We were fortunate enough to have Kate's office take a lean into that in a hard way. We had, you know, we had Representative Rayfield, we had State Treasurer Tobias Reed, we had Senator Merkley come in, and it was a way for us just to connect and make sure everybody was talking to everyone. And I think it was, you know, it served its purpose. And then we kind of we moved away from that. But during that time, we also invested significantly into audio-video equipment, and we were able to make that available to the Art Center, which used it for their last Arts Alive. We were able to make it available for the Corvallis Environmental Center, and we were able to also help Activity and several other small nonprofits in our community, you know, and backfill into resources they didn't have available. Since then, some of those organizations have bought some of their own equipment, and they continue to use the equipment at Corvallis Foundry. Corvallis Foundry has managed to keep its doors open. We lost a number of permanent desks and an office tenant, but we were able to keep enough part-time and drop-ins and just support from organizations to keep those doors open. And we're excited about what the future is. We're starting to get inquiries for office space. And I know some of you may have been up there and may have seen there is a 2,200 square foot space next door that is still unoccupied since 1958 that Rich Melhoff has. He and I have had a couple more conversations about potentially now bringing that online because we're getting a lot of inquiries on, hey, do you have a private office space for 2 or 3 people with maybe access to a conference room? And we're like, we don't, but we could. So I hope to see that come through. Talked to Simon at the Chamber about a possibility of that being a location for the Corvallis Chamber as well. So more to come on that. After the Let's Keep Connected kind of slowly started to, you know, become less important is from our aspect, we received funding with our partner Rural Development Initiative of the CARES Act funding through Business Oregon. That was about $85,000 technical assistance, and it was for throughout the state, primarily for rural entrepreneurs, Latinx, and tribal. And we spent all of that and more. And the results we had in the Benton County region were pretty good. We provided direct technical assistance to 21 entrepreneurs, 3 of those in Monroe and 3 of those in Philomath, 70% women. 4 of those were Latinx or Spanish speaking. And I think what's also important about that is that was direct technical assistance. So we worked with a small business owner, a small business startup in Monroe that was launching a landscape business and needed a partnership agreement. We were able to connect him with an attorney and pay for his attorney fees. We were able to provide bookkeeping fees, legal fees, and marketing, helping a couple small businesses get online, both in English and in Spanish. So that was pretty exciting for us, and a whole new area to be providing assistance. And keep in mind that we work with what we call small business entrepreneurs. So a lot of these are your Main Street entrepreneurs, your cafes, your small startups, your mom and pops, your encore entrepreneurs, as well as some of the businesses that are more into the tech side. So we lean very heavily into those businesses. We also were able to provide of the technical assistance that we were paying for, that we were able to provide to rural, Latinx, and tribal throughout the state. Over $15,000 of the funds that we paid went to small businesses in Benton County. So Greatness Digital and Lamplight Creatives, which Allison Lamplaw in Paloma. So we were able to pay businesses, small businesses that were helping small businesses that resided also in Benton County. So we're able to inject funds that way as well. You know, it's interesting that we delivered about 80 hours of direct technical assistance in Benton County to small businesses that came to us that needed that. And we also were able to build out what we are now calling our Reinventing Rural Ambassadors. We're our Entrepreneurs in Residence program. We have built that out. So we have 5 Reinventing Rural Ambassadors that we are presently paying in Benton County to deliver services, running our events. We're doing our live chats with women entrepreneurs, Ann Whittington. We have 3 artists and teaching artists because we're finding that our arts community and our makers and our creators need a lot of support. So we have 3 different people. We have Jess Felix, who is in Paloma, Laura Young in Southtown, and just Jen Hernandez. Both, all of them have worked with the Art Center or for the Art Center in the past. And they're not only delivering in Benton County, they're delivering statewide. We're excited also with something that we have been working on for several months and just signed a contract with an organization called Co-Starters, CoStarters.co. CoStarters.co is a major Kauffman partner, and we have been fortunate to be funded by Kauffman as well to deliver small business entrepreneurship programs specifically focusing on mid-market and smaller communities. They've never been able to reach into rural communities well, and we've signed a contract to deliver their programs to our communities and are eager to roll out our first program in Benton County. They have their Co-Starters Core program, which is a small business entrepreneurship 10-week program, in-depth, cohort-based, can be delivered both distance, hybrid, or in person. But they also have created both a refocus workshop, which is a 2-hour workshop for businesses to just maybe get their head around and their hands on what they need to do next or what changes have occurred. They also offer a rebuild program, which we are eager to launch. It is a 10-week cohort program specifically for businesses, small businesses to look at and say, okay, where am I now? What has changed? What's going to emerge? Where should I go? How do I best address this? What's coming at me next? And if any of you happen to have tuned in to the live chats with rural women entrepreneurs, and I know it's Lincoln County, but caught Laura Anderson with the dock box, which, we're selling a lot of dock boxes in Corvallis. I noticed at the Common Field, I was down there one day when the dock box pickup was, I was like, are you guys moving? They're like, no, these are all dock boxes. I'm like, wow, it's a lot of fish. She talked a lot about how she repositioned and rethought her business, and it's an excellent an example of this kind of rebuild and refocus program that we're going to be able to deliver. We're going to be delivering that in collaboration with the SBDC, and hopefully they will actually become the facilitators as we roll this program out. The Co-Starters program is in 280 communities. They've trained up over 1,000 facilitators and helped over 15,700 startups. Their small business entrepreneurship focus has been, I don't have numbers specifically for that, and just keep in mind, I think everybody's in a startup mode today, okay? Existing businesses are in a startup mode. Small businesses are having to change, pivot, take orders online, figure out where their next steps are. So we're excited because, we're an organization based in Benton County, and we believe in supporting, where we're based first and foremost, and it's an opportunity for us to create programs that particularly have aspects. Sorry, I'm getting a call here.
We can't hear you, Brad. We lost your sound. Brad, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Commissioner, it looks like maybe he's going to drop off and try to get back on. I don't know if you'd like to wait for him to try and do that, or we could move on to my friend Jeff Flush with SBDC, who I saw just popped on and might take advantage of this moment.
Let's see, it looks like Brad's little green telephone symbol did just come on again. Brad, are you able to...
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I've learned with mobile go-to-meeting, it doesn't shut off your phone, so when someone calls you, you have a small problem here. Anyways, I was wrapping up with Ann Whittington. From my understanding, she is, there are going to be economic recovery funds available for small communities, and she's also looking very closely at both the Refocus and Rebuild program for these small communities. The communities would obviously apply for that grant funding, and then we would work with them to help deliver this program. We're excited about it. I'm sorry, your presentation is stuck on my laptop, which can't get connected to the internet. I will get that sent to you. But we're here in Hammond, Oregon. And we're resilient, okay?
Nancy or Pat, do you have questions for Brad and the Foundry?
Brad, you mentioned quite a bit of rural emphasis. Does your organization have a defined territory geographically?
So Foundry Collective works geographically in the Pacific Northwest, mostly in Oregon. Where we're working the most is in our home county, Benton County. We do quite a bit of work with the Warm Springs tribe. We do quite a bit of work in Eastern Oregon, particularly Harney, Malheur, Lake, Baker, Umatilla County. So our work has been primarily this region, Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, the tribes, and then the far frontier, Eastern Oregon. Our model primarily, Pat, was, our belief that the rural communities, and when, rural communities, 50,000, 25,000, I mean, there's not a lot of difference in how they operate, benefit by having highly visible Main Street innovation hubs, and those hubs can be anything from, a shared workspace to co-working to a shared commercial kitchen, which, we leaned into the Pitchfork Kitchen 2 years ago. It wasn't successful. It wasn't financially feasible being gluten-free and where it was located. Could be a makerspace, which we are leaning into, a new makerspace that's actually launching out there. Actually, it's up and running now in Eastgate with Jason Dubois and Elemental Grow. So, we've supported Spark Collaborative in Burns, which has been real successful, Baker City, and those. But, the needs of small rural entrepreneurs are the same across our state. It's access to, it's access to broadband, it's access to mentorship, it's access to curriculum. Keep in mind this, it's very critical. More small businesses go out of business coming out of a recession than going into a recession or at the bottom of the recession. And we're also in a very unique position that we have a lot of aging business owners who may have very well thought they were going to ride that last economic boom for 4 or 5 years and then jump out, and we may start seeing more sales signs, going out of business signs as we see an economic boom come back. So there's, we're doing a lot of work with the Family Entrepreneurship Center at OSU and with Charlie Mitchell, who unfortunately is leaving that role. But we're working with them also to say, what are the resources that just on the ground small businesses need? And this can be a Zia Burrito, or this can be a small coffee shop like Kel's, or it can be someone who's running, a small furniture store, a small restaurant that's never taken an order online. How's the fastest way to get them there? So we're really down at that level. We dig ditches a lot of the time.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that, and I think your being in Hammond, Oregon qualifies as rural. So I'm glad you could get connected.
Yeah, sorry for the presentation. Kate, I don't know if we're going to bring up the funding for Rebuild now, or you want to leave that on the table for later.
I'm going to talk about the funding just a little bit at the very end, Commissioners, and kind of preview what the plans are around those conversations.
Okay. Do you want me to talk about that?
No, I'll bring it up at the end.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much, everybody. Sorry for the glitches, but we made it through. And everyone stay safe.
Thank you, Brad.
Hi,
Appreciate
Jeff.
your work.
How are you?
Welcome, Jeff.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. Kate, you want me to just go?
You know, you need no introduction, Jeff. So how about that? No. For those of you who don't know, please let me introduce Jeff Flesh, the Small Business Development Center, and another one of our excellent partners. Thank you.
Oh my God, that was so fun, Kate. Thanks, Kate. Thanks thank you to the Corvallis Benton Economic Development Office for having us here. Commissioners, I'm going to see if I can do this in 10 minutes. So I just set my clock. Let's see. So good morning. Yeah, it's still morning, right? Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for having me here today. So the SBDC's mission is to promote growth, innovation, productivity, and revenue for small businesses through improvements to their business administration. And then the LBCC SBDC's vision is to become the state-recognized leader in small business development by ensuring that we are in relationship with every local small business and making sure that all small business owners know how to access our services. The vision is directly linked to the college's mission and the Corvallis 2040 vision and the Benton County 2040 Thriving Communities initiative. In that, increasing access to the LBCC SBDC ensures that all local small businesses have the information they need delivered through expert advice, education and training, and financial counseling and referrals, which will all ensure thriving, prosperous, and sustainable small businesses and communities. The LBCC SBDC maintains strong ties and relationships with Benton County small businesses. We've been advising and counseling small businesses in Benton County for many years and have seen many businesses succeed, and we'll talk about some data in just a minute. Because the SBDC is full of entrepreneurial minds, this is true, we've also pivoted with small businesses this past year by iterating our business model. And I'm going to talk about just a couple business points here about that. So one thing we've done is advise businesses on iterating their business model to meet the ever-changing demands of the pandemic. You know, early on, people were iterating their business model every 5 minutes. And if you weren't, you were in trouble because it was just changing so fast. At the very beginning, I was getting like 400 emails a day, state, federal, local, just coming in. We also converted all workshops and training within 4 weeks directly to remote delivery. So everything has been remote for a very long time. We also increased access to us, that is the SBDC, through a strategic decision last summer to make every workshop and every training free, so that we could see more people get access to more small businesses. And then through counseling small businesses on financial matters and connecting hundreds of them to financial support mechanisms and partners. So here's an example, just one, of such business. So Zia's was mentioned earlier by Brad, actually. Southwest Cuisine now it's called, and Kathleen and her son Diego. They weathered COVID by offering curbside pickup at first, right? And so Zia's, Kathleen saw it as an opportunity to not withdraw, but to step into. And actually, if you go to their website, I was just looking at it again today, this morning, it's so beautiful. They not only have curbside now, but they've also partnered with Common Fields and have a food truck in addition to the farmer's market. So they looked at it as an opportunity to really grow, and that's what we talk about when we're talking about iterating their business model. So their funding came primarily from family, however, we did connect them with lenders also. And then let's look at some service data from last year. So 305 clients were served last year. We had 11 business starts. This is 2020 during the pandemic. It's really what I focused on from a data perspective. 305 served in Benton County, 11 business starts, 28 jobs created, 22 jobs retained, almost $1.2 million in capital infusion, which, by the way, was a 4-time increase from the year previously, and then 179 class attendees in trainings and workshops. And then I wanted to give you a little bit more data here from the center as a whole. I just found this data. We were on the phone with Representative Rayfield the other day, and I gave this data to Dan as well. So for the entire center, when it comes to serving women-owned businesses, last year we were up 231%. For minority businesses, 319%. For Hispanic and Latinx business owners, 291%. And then for veteran-owned businesses, 221% increase in access to services. So I say, though navigating and pivoting the SBDC model was challenging in 2020, we managed to continue to grow and to continue to serve. We began 2021 by offering Small Business Management 1 and 2, which are two paramount products for us, training products for us, for free. And I'm pleased to report to all of you that 48% and 52% respectively of those two class cohorts are full of Benton County small businesses. Additionally, we just hired 2 new advisors. So we have Vanessa Leon Guerrero, who has just come on board to serve the Latinx and Hispanic small business community. She's on the ground running. She already has 7 or 8 clients, and I just talked to her about two other ones. I sent her to have conversations with 2 more. And then we just hired Brian Haskell, who will be reconnecting with current clients and then generating new clients this year. We are very close to also bringing on a new director, which I'm really excited about. I'm actually going to make a hard offer today. And I see nothing but continuous growth over the coming years, and it's actually my expectation that occur. So I'd like to thank Kate Portia. I'd like to thank each of you for the time today, and then I'll open it up for questions and see how I did. Look at that, 5 minutes. That was pretty good.
That's impressive. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeff, I appreciate your optimism and seeing the current situation as an opportunity that we've all been through a lot, and the old business models may or may not work, but I think there is a lot of opportunity coming here that as we enter spring and summer, and just at least the national statistics of all the pent-up demand and people ready to live more normal lives, but we'll have to figure out what normal means. But,
I agree with you 100%. And I think that, we're going to see a lot of different iteration. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but what I can say is that we're here, we've been here, we are here, and we will be here, and that our business model will always follow the businesses. And this is true for this entire department that I oversee here. We are a business-oriented, service-oriented, relationship-building machine, because that's what it's all about. There's just nothing that happens without relationships. And so each part of the business models in this department and SBDC, is a big part of that, is about ensuring that we have the highest quality relationships with the business community, and that's all of our partners and all of you on this call, because that's how we're going to grow, and we're going to grow together. And with the new director coming on board, I just see so much in the future for us as far as service is concerned.
Well, I appreciate this information, and I'm on the LBCC Budget Committee that will leap into action here fairly soon. So appreciate this background.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Jeff, do you foresee any additional federal investment in the small business development centers across the country?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I think it's yet to be determined. That's one thing that I was on the call with Representative Rayfield and Mark Gregory, who's the State Network Director, and the Associate Director on Friday or Thursday afternoon, late afternoon. And we were just informing, and bringing Representative Rayfield up to speed on all the impacts that have happened locally here. This data is a part of that. And then just making sure that Representative Rayfield knew that that was going to come before legislation as far as funding. And so I don't know about more funding. I think that I would be pleased to know that we're going to continue to get the current amount of funding at the very least, though.
Thank you. And I also have a question, and maybe more for Kate, but how much double counting is there of people served across RAIN and Foundry and SBDC? Because I know that you all wrap around people. And not sure how much overlap there is.
It's a good question.
It's a great question, Commissioner, and I don't know the answer to that, but it's certainly something we could look at. I think it is interesting today, as you heard a couple of the businesses mentioned multiple times. We're going to be looking at that in terms of duplication of services, and it's funny. I think there's two ways to look at that. One is this notion that I know, Caroline, who's on this phone call, and others on the call have said, no wrong door. That there may be a time and space where the right fit for a client is with Oregon Rain, and then there may be a time and space then when that's with the Small Business Development Center. But it is a valid question, and I will make a note to kind of look into that so we can see what that's looking like and how it's also what the experience is for the businesses, right? I think we've got to balance the notion of no wrong door, but also versus clarity on who's providing what services, right, in avoiding market duplication.
May I chime in on that, if possible?
Sure.
We talk about this all the time. Even Jeff and I have talked about this. And we do present you with every name, every business, every email. So you guys could put them all in one spreadsheet and dedupe or look and see. But there's also value in each individual group. For example, with Zia, she's helped by the family, helped by SBDC. She signed up for our Moneymaker, but she's getting 3 different types of technical assistance that is unique to each organization. So we're stronger together as an ecosystem and wrapping that around so that there's no duplication of specific services. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I concur. Any other questions?
Nancy.
Oh, hey, Nancy.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for coming today. And my fellow commissioners already asked some great questions. Did you replace Charlie Mitchell?
Oh, that's a good question. No, so Charlie Mitchell exited just over a year ago, right before the pandemic, in fact, and we were in a search process. Kate knows this well because she's traveled with me for over a year now, year and a half almost, through this process. And because of the pandemic, I made a strategic choice to stop the hiring process because we had started it pre-pandemic and then we were in the pandemic, and then I needed to make strategic decisions for this entire department, SBDC included. So I've been the interim director for this past year, and as I've mentioned, our new director will be coming on board. My hope is April 12th-ish.
Great. No, that's good to know. I'm happy to meet you sort of face-to-face, virtually face-to-face. I look forward to meeting, whoever your new director ends up being.
It's my pleasure too, and Nancy, it's a pleasure to meet you as well.
Okay, if there are no further questions for Jeff, we'll switch into Kate's review of discussions about going into this next biennium.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to make this real brief. I know you have lots of business to do today. So first, I just want to give you all a reminder that the 3 partners that you saw on this phone call, of course, are the ones that we specifically fund to do specific work in our county. But there's a number of other partners, and I just want to remind you guys how lucky we are to have such top-notch partners working more closely, more collaboratively than ever before, and I think it has really helped Benton County businesses weather the storm better than we may have seen in other counties. So I just want to say a huge thank you to the partners that are on this call and the other ones that are out there as well too, because we're all in this together, and it's been amazing to see everyone roll up their sleeves. So going forward and talking about next steps, I have asked the partners that you saw on this call to prepare kind of a quick document that would outline their goals for the next biennium so that we can understand not just the work that they've done the last biennium, but what those goals are going forward. The plan is then for our office to take a look at those, see how they align, again, with this notion of the balance of the no wrong door versus creating clarity and avoiding duplication. So we're going to be looking into that here over the next month, talking with partners, and then bringing back a proposal to you all. Of course, the contracts are administered through our office, but I still take this as it is your money, right? So I feel that it is your decision and appropriate. We'd like to make a recommendation to you. I don't know what that will be yet, but we're going to review these and get back to you. Brad did mention There is a modest balance left that had originally been attributed to the foundry. I believe it's $9,700 that was for physical improvements to his space. That project did not take hold, certainly because of the pandemic and some other things. So that's going to be part of that question too, is the disposition of those funds, if it will roll forward, what that will look like, and how best to do that. Again, my plan there is to come back with a recommendation for you all to take a look at. We're going to continue to work kind of as a conductor is how I see it, and just trying to bring the orchestra together and bring back that recommendation. I don't yet have a date, but I'll work with Teresa to get that on your schedules. I have talked with Mary Otley, though, about the budgeting process, so I think we've got a good idea about the overarching budget, and now we just want to work through the details of funding to the different organizations and the recommendations there. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. That.
Kate, I really appreciate the structure that we set up maybe 2 years ago, where you, as you said, you are the conductor and you deal with these kind of issues daily, and I think that was a good move on our part to have the funds go to you, and then you do the distribution and some of the tracking of metrics. And so I guess I'd be curious on how you see this setup, but from my point of view, that was a good move on our part.
Well, thank you for saying so, and I guess I want to say thank you for your faith in us to do that. I think it has helped the process because we are closer to the work, and again can act as conductor is how I think of it. I think it's worked very well, and I guess again just reassuring you guys that I ultimately see this as your money. It is the county's money, and that we are acting as your intermediary, but then can be in the work day to day and help herd cat or orchestrate different sections depending on how you want to think of it. So yeah, we're very happy with the setup. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Well, we look forward to the next stage of discussions and figuring out how best to blend our resources to keep building out that entrepreneurial ecosystem, as Caroline says. Make sure that we provide the best possible service to all of those folks in our community that need the assistance to get a new business up and going, or to keep one going and to get a rate. So thank you. And with that, we will move on because we are a bit behind this morning. Okay. So the next, Pat, you have a question? Okay. We are headed into our regular business meeting, and would anyone like to take a break, or should we just continue since we're about 40 minutes behind?
I think I just press on.
Jesse?
I could use a couple minutes to stand up.
Okay.
But I'll survive either way.
Let's take a quick break and come back, because we have both our new business and any information sharing and then an executive session to go. So I'd like to make sure that we have the stamina to make it through. So, but let's get back as soon as we can. Thank you. The first item of new business is just a brief discussion and decision about the Community Dispute Resolution Grant. Nancy, this is as much for you as anything else because this is an annual process. The University of Oregon receives money for dispute resolution grants and for mediation, community mediation for issues that don't necessarily need an attorney. And the amount of funds designated for Benton County are small. Every year they ask us if we want to accept the program, and what we have been saying ever since I've been in office is no, because it is not worth it to Benton County to set up a re-granting process and to process small grants for the about $16,000 per year that are allocated for Benton County. So what that does is it means that the University of Oregon ends up serving as that hub, and the local mediation provider here in Benton County, an organization called Neighbor to Neighbor, ends up working with University of Oregon to access those funds on behalf of local organizations that need their mediation services. And this year, both Neighbor to Neighbor reached out to me and University of Oregon. And so my proposal is that we do the same as usual. We turn down the funds in a formal way, but that we also invite Neighbor to Neighbor to come and speak to us about services that they provide across the county and how they work effectively with our local nonprofits and others to provide mediation. So, are there questions about that or other comments? And I think it would be a good idea to formally state that we will turn down the opportunity to grant those funds directly, and we'll leave that authority with the University of Oregon.
I think that sounds like a good plan, Commissioner Ojero. So are you looking for a motion?
I'd be happy to take a motion.
I was going to say so moved, but I don't know if that works for staff.
I'll have to ask Erica.
Some kind of phrasing would probably be helpful, yeah, to provide or refuse the funding, but
so I move to turn down the direct. Okay, now I should have written it down. I'm sorry.
Well, how about we will decline to take the Community Dispute Resolution Grant and re-granting authority and leave that responsibility with the University of Oregon.
So moved.
I will second that.
Is there any further discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that is taken care of. Then we'll move on to discussion regarding Emergency Operations Center staffing. Joe and Tracy, this is something we've talked a bit about already, but I think they have more specifics for us now.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for letting us join you this morning. I'll just give a little bit of context and then I'll turn it over to Tracy. As you'll recall, about a month ago, we came before you to ask for your authorization to hire 14 additional employees. I think most, if not all, of those employees at that point were intended to be a limited duration. Those employees were intended to help our EOC as well as our vaccine clinic efforts. We're before you today to just inform you of additional action that we are taking. In this case, the action that we're taking does not require your authorization. In this case, we are going to be talking about additional temporary positions, which department heads, the HR director, and I have the ability to authorize. But we'll back up about a week and a half ago. We met again with our EOC team and our health department team, and as part of that dialogue, they brought forward a request to hire 27 additional FTEs in support of the vaccine clinic efforts. We did review that with them. Tracy's been instrumental in working with them on that list and on those positions. And what we're wanting to share with you today is kind of another view of what this will actually look like. And so rather than 27 positions that we would be authorizing as temporary positions, we're actually just going to be authorizing hours per week, which will give the EOC the flexibility to ramp up and ramp down and schedule temporary employees or not schedule them. And so it gives us a lot of flexibility. What we would be doing is, if you look at the request of 27 FTEs that they were looking for, if we really translate that more in terms of hours, we're going to be authorizing 1,000 hours per week of temporary time. That 1,000 hours actually equates to about 25 full-time equivalents if they were to hire full-time equivalents. However, they are very likely going to be hiring more part-time employees, and hence the reason that we're just focusing on these additional employees being temporary employees. Tracy will talk more about that, but we did want to give you a heads up. So if we allocate 1,000 hours per week over the course of the next 14 weeks, I did an approximate calculation, and will probably be in the $420,000 to $500,000 range, depending on the hourly rate and overhead regarding each one of those employees. And so keeping in mind that we have about a total of $6 million available to us through FEMA. Initially, $3 million of that is what they've allocated to us currently. It is on a reimbursement process. So these monies that we would be expending with these additional temporaries would be coming out of our monies provided to us via FEMA. It does qualify, and we're thankful to have that money. I can tell you that some of these employees, Teresa Carley being one of them, we have some internal county employees that will be providing support and filling some of those roles, but by far the majority of those temporary positions would be coming from external hires. And so the message is we're going to be moving forward with having additional capacity. We just can't continue to manage the surge of vaccines without additional help. And I know this seems like a lot, but we do have a huge task in front of us, which is to have every adult that is interested being able to have their vaccine prior to the end of June, which is also a goal that the state has set. It'll go on past June, but this is our current surge between now and the end of June. With that being said, I'd like Tracy to jump in. And Tracy, I think you have some visuals you might want to be sharing. Is that correct?
Good morning, Commissioners. Sure, Joe. I could share a little spreadsheet that we've been using as a kind of a working guide and tracking document. Let's see. Thank you. Give it just a moment for it to pop up for you. There you go. Hopefully everyone can see that now. Joe did such a thorough job of explaining both the kind of the initiation of this surge, as well as kind of the planning that was involved in going forward. And really, what we were trying to do with the use of temporary staffing is to balance that control with giving the EOC folks flexibility. And just as a reminder, and unlike limited duration or regular status employees, temporary employees can be scheduled and unscheduled as needed. So our intent is to really not only fill the pipeline, but fill the positions, but fill the pipeline behind the positions, so that the EOC has some flexibility to draw from a pool of temporary people to be able to fill their needs. So I'm going to go to the spreadsheet right now, and you'll see that in columns E and in column F is where we identify whether the positions can be filled with a temporary employee or a county employee. And so I think that would be useful for you to note. And then column G is the weekly staffing number. And this is where we came up with a calculation for the hours that would be needed for temporary positions. So the types of positions that they're filling are the volunteer coordinator. We have that posted right now for a temporary position, as well as a limited duration position. That was one of the positions that came to you 4 or 6 weeks ago with the 14 positions that Joe was mentioning that were mostly limited duration. But what that will also do is that gives us a pool, 2 pools to draw from, actually, to fill those temporary roles. So that's underway right now. Suzanne Hoffman is interviewing for the limited duration coordinator this week, and hopefully we'll make a selection, and then she has some good candidates in that pool that we may be able to offer temporary assignments to. The liaisons, we're starting out with 5 liaisons. We are onboarding them today in HR, and tomorrow morning they will report to the EOC. So we're happy to have been able to implement that very, very quickly from the time that this first came to us. And again, we'll be establishing a pool behind this first group of 5 so that the EOC will have the flexibility to ramp up when they need to. Teresa Farley, as Joe mentioned, is the liaison lead, so we're filling that role with a county employee. The next group of positions that we're going to be filling are the data entry roles, and those are really going to be scheduled and unscheduled as needed. I think it's kind of unknown just how big that body of work is right now, and they will be overseen by a couple of county employees who are familiar with the system that they're using for tracking. And then the operations section sheet, as you can see, these will be 2 county employees, so we'll be reaching out to departments to fill those positions. And the field operations staff will also be filled by reaching out to departments for county employees. However, I would say that with a caveat. I'm interested to see how many of these temporary folks will do in their roles. I feel like we've got some really high quality folks that we're sending over. I think that one of the big benefits of filling these roles in this way is the stability that this offers to the EOC versus using county employees who have been rotating either 1 or 2 weeks on and 1 or 2 weeks off. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions.
So, if I can just reiterate, there's been a much clearer decision about who needs to be internal and whom is external hire. And then secondly, that we are splitting the difference on some of these other positions and hiring the 2 volunteer coordinators and 5 liaisons as limited duration, but then we'll have a pool behind them that is hourly employees that we can call in as needed. So basically it's giving us a much better surge capacity than we would have had if we'd hired them all as limited duration. So that sounds like a good plan. I think my biggest question is, do we have enough capacity for the operations section chief and the field operations staffing positions from our current pool of county employees, given how hard people are working?
So a couple of things that I would expect, and I would just again, add to that, my point of view is based on an HR point of view from outside the EOC operation. But what I would expect to see is that once we get these temps in there and the get up to speed in their roles and in the operations of the EOC, that we will also be able to relieve people, county employees who are currently serving in some capacity in some of these roles, be able to relieve them of those obligations and free up those resources. That's what I would expect to see with this.
That's great. I think that is important at this point in time. Pat, you had a question?
Yeah, just mainly a comment. I think this is a great plan. I heard something yesterday about vaccine production in March will be 3 times more than in February. So I think, and that's without the AstraZeneca vaccine. So I think being geared up and ready to tell whoever the vaccine berry is that we're ready, send it down. And I know last week, I think at Reether, it was the first time we were at capacity for both days. And so planning for the future and getting some fresh staff in there just makes sense.
HR is also providing or taking a larger role in the onboarding process of these new hires. We will be able to ensure that they have taken the ICS courses that are required for that FEMA reimbursement, as well as a couple of other courses that would be really helpful for them before they even are activated over at the EOC. And so hopefully that will also relieve some of the EOC staff, and Brian in particular, of some of those responsibilities that take up a lot of his time. We're also hoping to can his EOC training that he currently delivers in person, so that can be delivered through our LEARN system, our LMS, our learning management system, and that we'll be able to provide that to these new hires on their first day in HR onboarding.
That all sounds good. Anything to streamline and take some of the load off of some of those key people is a smart thing to do.
Oh, is there anything else you'd like me to touch on?
Tracy, not on this topic, unless the board has additional questions. We just wanted to make sure that the board was informed of the action that we're taking and why.
Sounds good.
Commissioners, before we move on to the next agenda topic, I did want to recognize Tracy. I believe this is Tracy's anniversary of joining Benton County many years ago, so many years ago, I can't remember, but I know it's north of 10 or 12 years. So Tracy, how long have you been with us?
Thank you, Joe. It's 11 years today.
Look at that smile on her face, Commissioners. She has enjoyed every day of it. Can you tell?
No place I'd rather be.
Congratulations, Tracy. Thank you. Okay, well, hearing no more questions or discussion about those issues, we'll move on. And I can get my agenda screen back again. Item 5.3 is a discussion decision about amending the Benton County COVID-19 donated leave policy. And Tracy, you're on deck again.
Hopefully you have this policy in front of you. And, excuse me, This is another one of those interim policies that's intended to cover the period of when we're under the effects of the COVID pandemic. The county currently has donated leave programs that with language in our contracts as well as in our personnel policy. All of the donated leave processes are consistent in that they're for the purpose of when someone suffers a catastrophic illness or accident or something that takes them out of the workplace for a long time, and they find that they have exhausted their own personal sick leave accruals or paid time off accruals. When they're faced with those circumstances, then they can request that HR send out a donated leave request where employees can donate any of their leave accruals, vacation, sick leave, personal leave, PTO, to the employee who is in need. This interim policy expands that to expands the reasons for requesting donated leave for, this is particularly targeted to our parent employees who may have need to continue to take time off for caring for school-aged children or helping their school-aged children with the hybrid school or online-only school options. And there's a bit of a change in the way leave is donated. This leave may only be donated as vacation time, and so that it also has the effect of reducing liability, because as you know, we have to pay out vacation when an employee terminates or separates from the county, whereas we don't have to pay out a sick leave accrual or a personal leave accrual.
So it's a way to buy down some of those huge banks of, of vacation leave. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And there is also a benefit. Something that's come up for us is we do have some employees who, earn vacation at a pretty high rate and really have a tough time spending it down during the year. And so while we currently have a vacation cash out policy, sometimes it's tough to meet the criterion for that, which is taking 80 hours of leave. And so one benefit is that if you donate a 40-hour block, that can count towards your meeting your cash out requirement.
That makes sense. Are there questions for Tracy?
Commissioners, I just wanted to follow up and recognize that we have a small group that has been meeting since probably last fall regarding daycare issues that employees are facing. And that particular group started meeting every other week, and then we have now migrated to meeting just once a month. But we've had a number of accomplishments, and this is probably our third or fourth thing that has been brought forward from that group. This was really Tracy's idea that she brought up during that child care meeting or daycare meeting that we had about a month ago, and that team really liked it and thought it would be a useful tool, and hence the reason that we're in front of you today.
And Tracy, I might have some more questions for you offline that's related to this, but maybe getting more in the weeds. So maybe I'll shoot you an email.
Sure.
Okay. I think it sounds like a great idea, and I think it will help our parents among us on staff continue to juggle the responsibilities that they're dealing with right now. Commissioner Malone.
Well, are we ready for a motion?
Yes.
I move to amend Benton County's COVID policy allowing employees to transfer or donate some of their accrued vacation or personal leave to another employee for reasons related to COVID-19.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Approved unanimously. And appreciate the work of the Child Care Working Group and Tracy bringing this to us.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks, Tracy.
Okay, moving back to the agenda. I'm looking forward to working on more than one screen again so that I don't have to flip back and forth. We are now at the point in the agenda where we will do our information sharing among commissioners. But I also know that Nick Griff is waiting in the wings for an executive session. And do you have a preference, Joe, as to whether we do one before the other?
Commissioner, we also have Gary Stockoff waiting in the wings to potentially address the board's or one of the board members' concerns regarding transportation issues. So in either case, Gary's going to be waiting or Nick is going to be waiting. So
okay. Let's just do go through the agenda in the order printed and begin with information sharing. And I'll start off with the elements that Joe was referring to. In this past week, I've gotten comments or email from multiple residents that are down on Bell Fountain, particularly near the Bell Fountain Blue Ellen intersection, and I've shared those email messages with the board. There, in the past, there's been a fatality at that intersection. More recently, there have been several bad accidents, but not deaths in the last 4-year window anyway, 4 or 5 year window. And the neighbors are very interested in more work to slow down the speeds at that intersection, whether through various kinds of devices like signage or lowering the speed limit or other measures. And I asked Gary and Laurel for an update on what could be done, and they've provided a great list with respect to that intersection. And I need to go back and round out my communications with our community members about what our intent is moving forward. We have some grant dollars already potentially in the pipeline to address the intersection, which Gary can elaborate on in a moment. But the more intensive measures, like adding a stop sign so it's a 4-way stop, or putting in speed limit, require more study and more staff time and funding to put toward it. So, Gary, could you address that for us, and then we can get a sense for where the board is with respect to how we want to move forward with this particular intersection. Oh, I can't hear you, Gary. Nope. Not sure what you said. He's logging off and logging back on again. Part of the reason I felt that it would be worthwhile to talk about this with a little bit greater length was just to make sure that we all understood the processes that Public Works has to go through if they want to change the speed limit. Recent state legislation gave us a little bit more flexibility, but there's still quite a process that involves the state. There's a certain standard of evidence that has to be reached in order to put forth that proposal to change the speed limit. Joe, do you want to step in at all while we're waiting for Gary to come back?
Commissioners, I believe, based on the information I have from Gary, that even based on that recent legislation, it appears that this particular intersection will have to be approved or any changes would not be under the purview of Benton County. They would still be under the purview of the state.
That's my understanding. Looks like Gary's back and can try again.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Technology, you hate it, I mean love it. Okay, the easier part, the grant funding for additional items to enhance the visibility of the intersection. That's under the ARTS, All Roads Transportation Safety, which is a program that the state started about 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And so those would be to add reflective backing to the signal that's there, the flashing unit, enhance the sign size leading up to the intersection, possibly put rumble strips in on Bell Fountain. Again, it's to bring attention to the intersections coming up. That cycle, we should be finding out pretty soon whether we got funding for that. It is out in the future, but that would be something that would be there. Those same enhancements were also kind of referred to in a much broader sense in the most recent TSP update for that intersection. And if you remember, I listed kind of the intersections that were the most high rated regarding safety or lack thereof from the TSP. This one was a medium rated project, so it didn't have the same issues that, say, Bell Fountain and Airport does. And that has a whole different set of potential solutions for that one. So we have those. The cost of those, I'm not sure what we would be looking at for some of that stuff. We would refine that, but we have already applied for that. Laurel actually applied for that with the last round. The other ones, which is to lower the speed limit or create a four-way stop, and I'll just say four-way stop, I as an engineer, I could not support a four-way stop there. It will end up being more dangerous than what's there now. It's just not, it's not a viable solution, but it was mentioned, and I know that doesn't make sense a lot of times, but they really are in that situation more dangerous. But whether we do that or we do a lower speed limit, we have to go through certain warrants and collect information. I haven't been able to talk to Laurel again because she's thankfully having some downtime over on the coast this week to see how recent we have updated the speeds out there or the daily counts or the accident. We have to gather that recent accident data to see, has there been an uptick in accidents? Has the speeds gone up over the last little while? And one of the anomalies we've had in the last year is that traffic is actually down in many instances because of COVID. So we just want to make sure we have the most current data that we have, because we will have to apply, make an application to the ODOT to actually have our request, whatever that might be, reviewed. And as a staff, we want to be able to support that with the facts and that there's rationale for doing that. Now, as I mentioned in my reply, the speed limit is currently 50 miles an hour out there. So the most that we could see it dropped would be 5 miles an hour to 45. And I don't even know if we did the numbers, how they got to 50, because that really is kind of a basic rule. So it's been lowered, I'm guessing, in the past already down to 50 just to help address some of the speeds out there. So, yeah, Pat.
I remember the change down to 50, and it's at least 10 years ago, and I think similar kind of complaints that we're dealing with now. People headed, trucks headed, or especially trucks headed north on 99W, and got over to the west, hit Bell Fountain and bypass, plug into Walnut and bypass Corvallis that way. And there were complaints from the Bell Fountain folks that why is ODOT doing or allowing widen this, but, so at least 10 years ago, the similar sort of discussion, and I have no idea about the process, but it was dropped down to 50 in that airport area.
It's interesting too, you mentioned that, Commissioner. You know, we have an item in our TSP that we need to follow up with to look at Bell Fountain and Fern regarding truck route or, you know, preferred bike route. And that discussion is coming, but we are seeing that as a bypass as things have gotten more congested in Corvallis or on 34 and 90 and 20, how they're very creative and they find other routes to get from A to B and save themselves time. So that's kind of a dynamic for the whole region in a way. So,
Personally, I've used that route for 30 or 40 years. So it's the quickest way to head west.
So right now, you know, I'm kind of in a holding pattern because we do need to gather fresh information and data to see kind of where we sit and compare that to whatever Laurel may have. And I'm sure she's got that. And again, it's just the timing of this is that she's been gone. So I haven't been able to check with her to see where we're at and what it looks like. But we have a couple options moving forward, but the one, which let's just talk about that, the lowering of the speed limit, or at least requesting it, it would take some time. There's not going to be an immediate going out and lowering the speed limit anytime soon. You know, maybe Greg could talk about enforcement out there, but I know that we had this, oh boy, probably a year and a half ago, there was airport. That intersection had flared up. And we did some speed studies out there and found that there, you know, yes, there's folks that do go fast, but for the most part, folks were living within the speed limit that was set out there. So we would have to confirm what the speeds are right now.
Nancy. So is Laurel the one who could speak to the process that ODOT uses for determining changing the speed limit?
She could get into the weeds. I mean, we have to gather the data, and then there's we send that to them, and their traffic analysis folks look it over and determine whether it's warranted. ODOT sets the speed limits for the state. Now go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. So I'm remembering back to some of my city council conversations about this, and it might be different for cities, or this might have has maybe changed since then. But I remember hearing something about it not, if ODOT goes to change the speed limit, it's not necessarily a guarantee that they will lower it, and in some cases they can determine that it should be faster. I don't know if that would apply to this situation.
That is, Commissioner, you're spot on. It very well could show that it needs to go to 55 or, you know, basic rule as opposed to 50.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a little bit of I'm a little tentative about that, because if we've got the 50 out there now, that's, somehow we got that, so that's good that it is 50.
And I would say, you know, I don't think necessarily the problem is the speed limit. It sounds like it's might be compliance with the speed limit, and maybe most people comply, but then we get a couple, you know, bad actors that are being risky. So, you know, I like what you're saying about rumble strips and other means of getting people's attention and saying, hey, danger, slow down.
We've got, I think, strips coming in from the east. To put them on Bell Fountain, we'd have to go through a justification even for that, because, again, we'll put those in, and guess what rumble strips do? They create a lot of noise. And we found that we've put them in places, and as soon as we put them in, we got complaints that, hey, take them out, they're too loud. So, you know, we kind of have to look and see how that works. We think some of the enhancements with, you know, larger signs coming in, maybe a little more notification, at least folks will know that. Sight distance out there is not too bad, actually. So probably can do for a lower cost that would help enhance it. But you're right, Commissioner. There's certain things we just have no control over, and bad behavior and distracted driving, and that's some of the things that get folks in trouble.
If I could add a couple things there, and thanks, Gary. I'd like to talk about bad behavior. If we could just stop that, I'd probably be out of a job. So if you get an answer to that, let me know. My experience with a lot of the roads in Benton County, and Bell Fountain is not the only one. I can't tell you how many complaints we get about, well, Highway 20, which is a whole different matter, Spring Hill, and there's others, 99, 20 out to the coast. They're all areas that we get calls on and they ask us to step up our enforcement, and why aren't we out there more, and where, and to be honest, Bell Fountain is not that big of a problem for accidents as far as our workload. We get many more on Highway 20 than we do that. But this last one we had that we got a lot of information back from the neighbors, I don't know how you can even address this last accident without talking about human behavior. The driver absolutely was not familiar with the area, wasn't paying attention. We're not sure exactly what he was doing, but he had two other people in the car with him, and they were probably not practicing good behavior, let's just put it that way. But no alcohol, no drugs, no speed, just absolutely missed the sign. And that's going to happen no matter what kind of physical devices you put into place. But I will say that we've talked to ODOT in the past about Spring Hill, about Scenic, and some other areas where people say they just go too fast, and ODOT is very reluctant to reduce speed limits in unincorporated areas of the county where there's no traffic control besides the basic speed. And it's frustrating for me because I have to tell people it's not something we can always control, and we will try to do what we can. But again, human behavior does not allow us to fix all the problems out there that will be caused by people not driving very well. So it's a tough answer.
Greg, I know, I think the county we do now anyway, those portable reader boards, and where you can flash your speed, and I think you've heard you talk about that before. They live for a little while, and then because they're gone a month later, some period of time, there's no permanent change. Is that something we can put out there? And I think it's important to have some response from the county saying, yes, this is a problem. As you say, it's maybe not the biggest one, but just to show that we can be responsive, and I don't know how often you could get the flashing speed limit mobile unit out there, but it might help for a little while.
And we can. We do have quite a request for we have 2 speed signs that we go out there. I suspect we'll probably be setting them up in the school zones here pretty soon, but maybe not. It just depends. We get a lot of requests for that, and this year is going to be particularly interested in slowing people down to the school zones when they get back. So we have those, and you're right. They do work for a temporary solution for a long-term problem. People see them, they slow down, and then they continue on. The ones who are traveling on the roads every day, same way every day, doesn't usually impact their speed or their recognition. But it's the ones who are not familiar with the area that come through there, see the speed, and then slow down. So we can get them out there. I don't know what the schedule is right now for where we're putting them, but I do know the person who's setting them up for us is not currently available. So we have to wait to see how that works too. But we can get them out there and put them on Bell Fountain.
One other thing, Commissioner, that we've looked at too in that regard is that you've got the ones that mount on the poles, sign poles, and they'll be there a little bit longer, but we still like to rotate them around so that other areas get benefit from those, and it's just a matter of who does that and how often. But much like Greg's saying, after a while, if you drive the road on a regular basis, it's just another sign, and you pay attention to it. So it helps that, like, the person that came through and was unfamiliar with it, but over the long haul, it's just another something that nobody sees.
Well, and I think this is from national news, but during COVID times, fewer miles traveled and more accidents. And that's unfortunate, but maybe because there's less traffic, some people go faster than they should.
Yep. Okay. Well, what I'm hearing is that we are going to proceed with the current planning, that it might be worthwhile to do a little bit more of a traffic monitoring study there, but it's not the top priority at this time. And that we could put out one of our speed monitoring devices. It would be nice to know when we might be able to do that, and so that I can respond to the interests of the neighborhood. But that's likely to be very much a temporary solution at best. So that's a pretty good summation. I know that the folks down there would like to see more sheriff's patrols there, but everyone would like to see more sheriff's patrols.
I would like to see more sheriff's patrols out there, so.
Yeah.
Kings Valley, get out to Kings Valley.
Yeah. We get more calls about Spring Hill than we do Bell Fountain, though, truly.
Springfield's a big one for us. It's a,
I was going to say, Gary knows this, and so does Laurel. We get all the time, can you be out there? The trucks are going that, because they figured out the route that way as well. And I would say probably 10 to 1 we get calls on Spring Hill than any place else. So, and we put our speed signs out there, and we set up there, and we try to do what we can. But again, people only see us when we're not there. Does that make sense? They only complain when we're not there. So they see us, and it's good. So.
Well, Gary, I appreciate your detailed email response, and I think part of the county's response should be that the lowering of the speed limit is probably unlikely, and I didn't know the part about careful what you wish for. You open up the question, and it's possible to have the 50-mile-an-hour limit bumped up to what the rest of the road is. So I think that's important to be realistic what we can do, and no, we can't snap our fingers. I saw one of the emails talking about reducing the speed limit to 25 or 30 miles an hour. Well, that's not realistic, and so I think that current reality, we ought to make sure that that's communicated clearly.
I will put together a response. I will communicate that clearly, that there's risk in presenting anything to ODOT, if they could just revert to the base rule.
And Commissioner, I think it is good that we go back and just refresh and update the information so that maybe something did happen. I mean, we don't know, so it's better to say we've got current data, what it says, and what they want, but at least it'll be current.
That sounds good. So we will be going back and updating the current data about that intersection. So that would mean that we would have counting strips out there at some point in the next few months?
Well, yeah, we're going to shoot for that. Again, I talked to Laurel about how we want to, if we want to set tubes out or just set somebody out there with a speed gun and it counts. I mean, there's ways we have interns, so that's why we like to use interns. So.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions about traffic and speed? Thank you both then for sticking around for this.
Commissioner Osro, I would ask the board to go to the executive session next, if at all possible. I realize there may be other topics you'd like to discuss, but Nick Curtis has been patiently waiting, and he does have another meeting that will be coming up shortly. So if the board would move into executive session, that's what I would request at this point.
Okay, we will do that. I do not have the code number in front of me for that executive session pertaining to...
Vance will be here momentarily.
Okay.
And just so the board knows, I need a few minutes to pack up and get out of the room too.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, John.
Yeah, that's fine. So do you want to go to a couple of other quick updates and then go back to Nick?
Sure. And then Erica or John can give us a heads up when the room is clear.
Should I go ahead and end and clear out now?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, should I go ahead and end the stream and clear out now?
Yes, please. Thank you, John.